Welcome to the One Jamaat, A Million Voices programme from the Ismaili Centre, Lisbon. The objective of this programme is to foster awareness of the diversity of our One Jamaat and strengthen empathy towards all brothers, sisters and people within our local and global community, as well as promoting a more welcoming attitude. We feel it is an appropriate time to remind ourselves that diversity is everywhere. It is not only through human migrations and newcomers within a country that we acknowledge how multiple identities coexist even within our own families. And as Maulana Hazar Imam mentioned many times, diversity is a blessing and not a burden. We could indeed use it as an opportunity to learn and to widen our knowledge. When we think many of us were brought up in extended families, and we believe it takes a whole village to raise a child or to nurture a person in the golden ages, we reaffirm that getting to know people better and to understand their uniqueness also supports our own growth. The Jamaat in our jurisdiction itself encompasses different family structures, different ideas about what good education is in practice, a variety of home languages, interfaith couples, diverse occupational choices, all of which are potential sources of mutual learning. Maulana Hazar Imam introduced us to the concept of One Jamaat. Again, as a community sharing faith as well as featuring a range of diversities from social and cultural settings, geographies of rooting, languages, traditions and heritages, we also know as human beings that the diversity of diversities is our greatest opportunity for new discoveries and learning that can be leveraged by engaging with other human beings and trying to understand what brings them to approach life through a different viewpoint to our own. Openness supports growth, as well as showing common humanity. This is also why it is a blessing for us today to be able to meet at the Lisbon Ismaili Centre, where in December 1996, Maulana Hazar Imam outlined, "It is my deep hope that this will be a centre of goodwill and of learning, of experience to be shared open-handedly." So we hope to honour that through our conversation this afternoon. So welcome to National Council President Rahim Firozali, Mukhi Sahib of Darkana Shafiq Jinnah, and Rahim Kassam from the delegation of the Ismaili Mammoth in Portugal. Good afternoon. So in this pursuit of thinking about learning a little bit about our identities before diving into what our institutions do here in Portugal, I would like to ask each one of you this afternoon to start by sharing a personal experience in which you remember feeling welcomed, feeling really welcomed by another person, another group. And what did it really feel like? President Rahim.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you for having us. Well, fortunately, I had many experiences of feeling welcome. The ones that I immediately thought about when you asked was from the Jamaat, actually in the Jamaati context. When Nasir and I used to travel to different cities, one of the things that we usually did was to visit the local Jamaat Khana. And it was always, we were always welcomed. And I remember from places like Edinburgh to Johannesburg, calling the local Mukhi Sahib and asking where the Jamaat Khana is, at what time are the prayers, and immediately they're volunteering to pick us up at the hotel, then taking us to Jamaat Khana and actually taking us out for dinner afterwards. This is small Jamaat Khana context, and obviously it felt really welcome, and it felt like we were being welcomed in that city. So those were wonderful experiences.
Fantastic experiences. Mukhi Sahib.
Thank you for having us today, Nadia. It's a pleasure to be here. Life is a long journey, and throughout this journey of life, there are many experiences which we go through, and one particular which is marking in our lives. When I returned to the UK to come to further my studies, I didn't know anybody. I was lost in the city, but going to Jamaat Khana and joining the volunteer corps, it opened up the new light completely. And the sense of being integrated and the sense of being helped, and it was a wonderful experience.
Fantastic. Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much, Nadia, for this invitation, and congratulations for this series of programs. I think the One Jamaat, a Million Voices is actually a very inspiring motto and very important one. In terms of the experiences, I would have to be recalled of the first day of school that I had in the primary school, and it is always a very, very interesting moment for a child. And I remember being welcomed by a teacher, was a relatively old lady, and she made me feel quite welcome, especially in the context of a family who had come to Portugal from Mozambique. I was already born here, of course, but which was trying to integrate themselves in the society. So the fact that there was someone who actually did some actions and tried to be welcoming further to her sense of duty was important for my, I would imagine, my school route throughout university, I would imagine.
Marking experiences. So much stays with us out of personal experiences of welcoming. Thank you so much to each one of you for sharing such personal experiences. So we've got around the table, around the virtual table today, different roles and mandates. And at the same time, we're all working towards a common goal, essentially, the unity of our Jamaat, fostering each Murid's and every family's sense of belonging here, and the betterment of the quality of life within the Jamaat and within society. So I'd like to start by asking President Rahim to briefly run us through what our Jamaati institutions have been doing in the last few years to support new families and to nurture in a way also the Jamaat around our jurisdiction as a whole.
Thank you, Nadia. Well, I would address your question in maybe two perspectives. The first being the improvement of the quality of life of the Murids who are in Portugal and Spain and Angola under our jurisdiction, and the second perspective on the perspective of unity and cohesion in the Jamaat. So, in terms of enhancement of quality of life, we work institutions try and work in a holistic fashion to address the many needs the families have, regardless of their origin or background. Obviously, to start with, we try and address any basic needs that the families may have in terms of food, accommodation, healthcare. In particular for families who have an economic vulnerability. So we try and cater for those more basic needs. Then the economic development is always a concern and is a priority, either being helping in finding a job or establishing a new micro business. Try and support the economic development of the families so that they can increase their income and provide for their families. Then obviously the education side, it's as we all know, it's extremely important from early childhood development, integration, access to ECD, as we know, Imam puts a lot of emphasis in that. Then having success in the primary and secondary studies, up to getting access to university education, either through scholarships, etc. And the education kind of remit goes to the acquisition of the Portuguese language, which is critical for the job market, and also the perspective of lifelong learning, to always acquire new skills, new capacities, to be able to improve your stance in the job market. And lastly, I would probably talk about healthcare, the access to healthcare. We've supported many families in difficult situations of sickness to access the best healthcare possible, and also to have access overall to the SNS, Sistema Nacional de Saúde, and the national healthcare system, and actually navigate the national healthcare system. So in terms of quality of life, this is the main dimensions we work with in a holistic, and try and make the families as sustainable, self-sustainable as possible in the shortest period of time. On the second perspective, the unity in the Jamaat, the cohesion in the Jamaat is also as important as or more than the quality of life. And the first thing that comes to mind when talking about that is the sense of brotherhood in the Jamaat. And we've all heard Imam talking numerous times about the Jamaat being a global brotherhood. And the brotherhood reflects primarily in us helping and supporting ourselves. And I think when we talk about the work of the institutions, is work from the Jamaat to the Jamaat. Is Jamaat working under the guidance of Maulana Hazrat Imam? Is Jamaat working and supporting other members of the Jamaat? And that is the sense of brotherhood. So when we talk about the institutions working in this area of fostering and promoting unity in the Jamaat, we are talking about anchoring ourselves in what is common ground, which is of course our faith. And something that is completely common to all of us is we want a better quality of life for ourselves and our families, and that's what we also strive for in our day-to-day. And we try and come from that kind of common ground to then promote a sense of pluralism in the Jamaat, to be open to the other perspectives, other ways of life, other background, other cultures, and embrace that diversity. And that is a work that institutions need to do with more and more intensity going forward, and it can be in different ways. I was just remembering the celebration of the Imamate Day in 2019 here in Lisbon, where we included we asked the young Syrians in our Jamaat to play some music and dance. And again, music and dance are common ground for everyone, right? And instead of the Jamaat that is not from that tradition being aside or not engaging, what we asked was an engagement to try and know what was that dance, what was that music, so that we all can grow, we can all learn from each other, we can all improve our understanding from each other, and build this more solid community that is respectful of the diversity, and not just respectful, goes the extra mile and actually embraces and nurtures that diversity.
Sharing time together.
Yes.
And sharing good times together as well.
And it can be as in very basic forms, but it can have a profound impact.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. I would like to turn to Mukisab Shafiq now. And I was wondering if you could share your views, picking up on President Rahim's point on collective spaces and opportunities to be together. What do these spaces represent? What role do they play for the Jamaat's sense of belonging to a common community?
Collective spaces and ceremonies are golden opportunities to really feel a sense of togetherness. Jamaati ceremonies are a time where all the members join for their spiritual nurturing and well-being. So no matter what their origin or language is, they become part of it as a whole. The purpose is just one: prayer and the practice of our faith as a Jamaat and a community. The idea of one Jamaat was very visible during the Diamond Jubilee preparations. For example, when everyone who wished to volunteer joined forces to work together for the events, which bound from people from different geographies in the same space and for a common celebrations. Volunteers are also a unifying force. They are the face of the community, whose welcoming contact we need to feel comfort in that sacred place.
Fantastic. And so true. Again, it's from the Jamaat to the Jamaat, isn't it? So a fantastic way of weaving it all together. Thank you very much, Mukisab, for that. I am now going to turn to Rahim, and in a way, I'd like to open a window into wider society. AKDN, the Aga Khan Development Network, encompasses non-denominational agencies working for society as a whole, irrespective of gender, origin, faith, with a goal to contribute to quality of life of the society as a whole. So Rahim, Executive Director at the delegation of the Ismaili Imam in Portugal, we were wondering if you could offer us a view of how this is done, in a sense, through AKDN's work.
Thank you, Nadia. Before I address that question directly, I think it could be useful to present the Aga Khan Development Network, or AKDN as normally people refer to it. The AKDN is a group of agencies established by Maulana Imam, and, as you said, works towards the improvement of the quality of life and to offer opportunities to vulnerable population, regardless of their gender, faith, origin. And the agencies that compose the Aga Khan Development Network actually work in three different areas. In the area of economic development, in the area of social development, and in the area of culture. So in the area of economic development, the actions are undertaken through the Aga Khan Fund for the Economic Development. They are developed by for-profit companies, but the companies act having in mind the concepts related to the impact that those investments cause in terms of the improvement of the quality of life and in terms of the social development of the regions in which they are investing. In the social dimension, in the social development area, we have several agencies which are very known, such as the Aga Khan Foundation, the Aga Khan Academies, the Aga Khan Universities, and many others that work in the field of enhancing the social and economic patterns of given communities. And of course, we have also the area of culture through the Aga Khan Trust for Culture. And culture is seen as a catalyst for development. Development and the improvement of quality of life is done by material aspects, but also relates to aspects of the spirit, relates to aspects of identity, of the sense of belonging to the community. And this is very often achieved by mobilizing culture, mobilizing partners that are able to give a sense of pride to the community. And so there are programs in the area of architecture, in the area of music, in the area of the museums and other art forms. So these agencies have certain common underpinning principles in the sense that they were established by Maulana Imam as a part to comply with his responsibility to improve the quality of life of societies in general. And these ethical underpinnings emanate directly from the social ethic of Islam. And so some of the ethics that we are talking about are closely related to the notion that you have addressed in your questions relating to diversity, to the value of pluralism. And one of the ethics which I would highlight is the ethic of inclusiveness. And this relates to the fact that it is believed that humankind has a unique origin, despite all its diversity, despite all its geographical dispersion, of all its history, the origin is common. And that being the case, it is only natural that there is care and nurture for that diversity of humankind. Of course, we also have the ethical principle of education and knowledge, in the sense that this has always been a treasured aspect in our history. And of course, the knowledge that we acquire needs to have as a primary goal to be put available to the community. The knowledge, of course, serves own purposes of enlightenment, but it also serves to be able to retribute to the community. And that is one of the primary objectives of acquiring knowledge. We also have an ethic of compassion and sharing, whereby the people who are blessed with resources, be it material, being intellectual, spirit, are able to share those resources and the intellect, the knowledge with others who are less fortunate. And related to this, we have also the ethic of self-reliance. Whereas we are bounded to help others, we also need to be mindful that people have self-dignity and they have to be responsible for their own development. And there are many other ethical aspects of the work of AKDN related to the respect of life, to healthcare, to the systems of good governance. But on these notions of ethical framework and also of the details of the several agencies, in order not to expand a lot, I would advise that the website of the AKDN could be consulted because it has very interesting information. I would just leave with, add certain principles that are relatively common to the work of the agencies of the AKDN, to the specific projects. The first is a principle of consultation and partnership. It is standard whichever agency tries to develop a project that they have a spirit of obtaining the input and obtaining the partnership of the governance, of the local governance structure, be it at a national level, being at a municipal level, being the authorities of the community in itself. So this idea is actually relating to a success factor of the programs, which is to try to mobilize communities to find their own solutions. It is not a standard procedure to simply go to a geographic territory or to go to a community and say, this is the solution we want to give you or we want to impose you. It is more of establishing partnership, evaluating what are the needs of the community and what the AKDN can offer, and then try to find systems in the sense that there could be mutual benefits and that the community can benefit from the solutions they identify. The other principle I would like to highlight is the principle of the projects being always seen in a long run. Whereas it is quite important that any activity may have a long-term impact and very often an intergenerational impact. If we look at the work which was done by the institutions which were predecessor of the Aga Khan Development Network by the former Imam Maulana Sultan Muhammad Shah, we see that the results that we see today and have been continued by Maulana Azhar Imam have actually been nurtured throughout times. And it is the hope of these projects that the activities that we are doing today can contribute to 2, 3, 4 generations. And I think that when we look at developing activities and collaborating and assisting other people, we also have in mind this possibility of causing impact in the long run. The third principle, I would say, is a principle of holistic development. Improving the quality of life of a person or a community is not related to one single aspect in terms of economic progress or health or education. It needs to be seen as a whole. And the agencies of the Aga Khan Development Network have this philosophy of when they are working with communities or in a geographic territory to try to actually touch on multiple areas, sometimes in multiple areas with different stakeholders in communities and families, economic progress for certain members of the family or the community, education simultaneously, but focused on other aspects. So this notion of having the improvement of the quality of life as a whole system, I think, is also a very important notion. And by building all these systems, we try to accept that people are different, but all the people have potential to be masters of their own development and sometimes they just need a little spark, a little help to get to access opportunities.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for offering, well, a lot more than just one window into this pretty wide world that is AKDN and its agency's work. And it's striking how, irrespective of our viewpoints, irrespective of our specific mandates, we're all looking at giving back, active listening, community, building together in a sense. So each one of you has kind of brought that back, and it seems like we're weaving all of this together as a whole. So I would like to maybe transport us a little into the future, and Rahim has given us sort of a motto for this longer term vision, and I would like to go back to President Rahim and ask, what are the Jamaati institutions, what would we think the future would look like when we look at Jamaati institutions?
Nadia, I would say that when we look at the future in the lens of the composition of the Jamaat and the composition of society, we're looking at growing diverse community. And to start with, that is a global trend. As Imam has actually said to us that the issue is not just dealing with diversity, is actually dealing with a increasing diversity as we move forward. So that's a common trend, an increasing diversity in society around the world. And in the case of Portugal, and specifically of the Portuguese Jamaat, I think that is even more compounded. So we see a much more diverse Jamaat today than we saw maybe 5 years ago or even 2 years ago, and we'll definitely see an even more diverse Jamaat in 5 years, 10 years to come. And there are many forces at play. So to start with, there will be murids from around the world looking for better prospects, better living to come to Portugal. Then we'll have murids from other countries that are living in situations of war or profound instability to also look for different places for them to live with their families. Then we have a more global student population, and we have more and more students coming to Portugal to pursue their studies. We also see in Portugal, as a result of the growing interest around the world, more and more investors, murids from around the world coming to Portugal to establish an economic activity or at least establish some sort of economic interest. And I think this is compounded because Portugal is the seat of the imamate, and that has, of course, increased the levels of interest in Portugal, paired with the welcoming and very integrative attitude from Portuguese government and Portuguese society as a whole, which are exemplary, I would say. In terms of pluralism, the Portuguese society is absolutely exemplary. But when we look at diversity and all of these forces, we should also add the actual structure in the families. We have more and more diversity within the families. We have more and more couples who are from different faiths or different backgrounds, different traditions, different identities. As people become more and more comfortable and confident in expressing their own identity, that also brings more and more diversity. So definitely diversity is a major trend when we look at the future, as you said. And the question we should ask ourselves is what do we do about it? How should we position ourselves? Should we try and remove ourselves from that discussion and from that interaction and try and seek refuge in our own bubble, in our own comfort zone, and perhaps look the other way and look suspiciously to what is different? Should we have that attitude? And I would say definitely not. Definitely not. That is definitely not what Hazrat Imam expects from us. He expects us to be a pluralistic Jamaat, a Jamaat that builds on the strength of diversity, that we understand each other, that we help each other. We've heard him many times in different countries saying, if you move countries, if you're living somewhere else, ask for help from the local institutions, from the local Jamaat. That is what he expects from us. He expects the Jamaat to be strong in its diversity, that has a strong base and strong anchor of understanding ourselves, between ourselves. And that is not easy. Again, resorting to the best source possible, his words, Haj Imam's words, people are not born pluralistic. It's not an innate capacity. So we need to learn, and we need to grow, and we need to develop that capacity. And that is a personal responsibility. That is an individual responsibility on each murid, on each member of the Jamaat, to build that sense of pluralism, to build that sense of welcoming, as we were talking in the beginning, of welcoming the other, regardless of their background, cultural habits, the music they listen to, the ideas they have, the preferences they may have in different areas, different ideas. We need to be welcoming. We need to learn from each other. We need to understand each other, and bring that understanding to build a strong, understanding Jamaat. Because resorting to your words, Nadia, in the beginning from Haj Imam, diversity is not a burden, is a blessing, and that's how we should look at it. It's a blessing, and we should leverage it, and we should take advantage of that blessing as much as possible.
We have a long path ahead,
yes,
but a beautiful challenge in our hands.
And it will never be ended as well.
Absolutely.
It's a long path, and it's building on strength from strength.
And what a beautiful question you left us with, to start doing that in our day-to-day lives. Thank you very much, President Rahim.
Thank you, Nadia.
Maybe we can use this as a chance, Muki Sahib, to use this time for a message to each murid in the Portuguese jurisdiction, our viewers today. If you were to send out a message, in a sense, to every murid within our Portuguese jurisdiction right now, to encourage us all to be more welcoming in our diversities, what would you wish us to do?
Our wish is for the Jamaat to always be united, to feel a sense of togetherness, and our ceremonies and community spaces are an opportunity to keep on creating the sense of being one Jamaat. So our message would be simple and humane. Get to know each other better, be kind, and always listen with your heart. Keep an open heart.
Fantastic. Let's hope this message gets to all of our hearts, in a sense, and that we can nurture our learning throughout the next few years. Thank you for that. Rahim, I'm going to come back to you. And I'm wondering if you could help us, again, going through very practical things as we've been sharing in the last few minutes, to understand what fostering pluralism looks like in practical examples at AKDN generally, and how it impacts people, in a sense.
Yes. So I would start by picking up something that the President actually said, that we are not born being pluralistic, and it needs to be worked upon. And I'm reminding of the initiative that Maulana Haj Imam had with the government of Canada, although this is not an institution that is part of the AKDN. It is a very cherished initiative of Maulana Haj Imam, which was the establishment of the Global Center for Pluralism. And it derives precisely in this philosophy that pluralism needs to be nurtured. Pluralism needs to be educated. Pluralism needs to be part of everyday lives of people. And there are a number of activities that the Global Center of Pluralism does, and I'm reminded of the lecture that took place right here at the Ismaili Center in 2019 with the invited keynote speaker, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Madam Amina J. Mohammed. And it is this sort of initiatives that the Global Center for Pluralism does, and it actually tries to put this in an agenda, trying to cope with this wider dynamics of movements that the President very well identified. I was also reminded when listening to my colleague panelists of the power of culture. And we were talking about music and dancing. We had the opportunity of having here in Lisbon the Aga Khan Award for Architecture in 2013, and more recently the Aga Khan Music Awards. And there was a concert in the Aga Khan Music Awards, which I found particularly interesting, between the Gulbenkian Orchestra and the Aga Khan Master Musicians. People with different origins, with different backgrounds, each coming from a different region and different cultural traditions. But when they sat there to play the music, nothing else mattered. It was just a beautiful aesthetic moment, vibrating throughout the room. And culture often has this power of eliminating whatever is superfluous and simply focus on beauty, on aesthetics, on trying to pull from the other what is more interesting in their culture. Another example I could give is precisely the activities that AKF, the Aga Khan Foundation, is implemented in Portugal. AKF is developing a program of early childhood development in the sense that it is practiced through these early years, the promotion of ideas of pluralism, of being able to actually look at each other in a diverse form, but valuing that diversity. And this is also a philosophy that AKF implements in their urban community support program, in which communities are helped to get to know each other. Sometimes neighbors do not speak, and sometimes they need a little facilitation to be able to support each other. And AKF is trying to ignite, and is been able to ignite that spark in most of the regions in Portugal. And I would say one final example would be the initiative that we have with the Portuguese government, between the Aga Khan Development Network and the Ministry of Science, in terms of offering scholarships for research, for collaborative investigations. So the idea, and the first call within this global initiative has been finalized and the projects are ongoing, and the second call will be announced soon. The idea is to have collaborative research between Portuguese institutions, institutions of Portuguese-speaking Africa and other African countries, and AKDN institutions. So I would say that at the top level, conceptual level of research, promoting interaction between research and academia, from the ground, neighborhood, territorial support through music, AKDN has a wide scope of activities that try to promote quality of life, always grounded in this principle of accepting diversity and valuing diversity as an asset.
Fantastic. Food for thought, a lot of it. And I think it also helps our viewers today to get a picture of what is happening in various places and of how we can nurture these million voices, whether it is wider society, whether it is within our institutions, collaborating, and within our collective spaces. So thank you so much to all of you for that. And it strikes me as, again, trying to weave together the various examples. We're all essentially talking about the same thing, about the importance of dialogue and of getting to know each other better and to establish a way of working together, of doing things together, of collaborating in a sense. So one of the most effective exercises for growth is informed debate between viewpoints, on the basis that investing in better understanding of where those viewpoints come from, what brought them about, would help to grow together in a sense. So I'd like to thank each one of you individually for opening these windows into new understanding this afternoon, and to help us reflect on the importance of personally contributing towards valuing diversity and fostering pluralism. It is about each and every one of us, after all, individually, and what we can bring to the table and do together. So before we conclude, if I may, I'd like to invite you to play a little game and make this again an exercise of common humanity in a sense, and maybe invite our viewers to do the same at home, maybe with people they live with their families. And I would like you to think about numbers from 0 to 5 in your head, in a sequence. And I would also like you to use your hands now to show us and to show each other how this counting would be from 0 to 5 if we use our hands. Shall we try? Okay. So let's go. I'm going to say the numbers out loud, and we can go with it with our hands. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Beautiful. So each one of us would do it in a hand, or with one, well, obviously a choice of a hand, and showing maybe in different ways, or starting from different point, whether it is our thumb or our little finger or our indicator. And again, a very simple game, which if we were to explore what our upbringing, what our schooling contributing towards the way we count, we would probably learn a lot more about our backgrounds and about what makes us think through a basic exercise of algebra, which we're used to since very early childhood, probably, how we could do it differently amongst each other, amongst such a small group today of 4 with very big ideas. So trying to go on to the objective we would like to leave, I think, today as a common objective for anybody who is walking with us and building with us towards a future. The idea of learning diversity through simple everyday acts might be a starting point. And again, a heartfelt thank you for having us here today, for being together today as an us, weaving together what the next few steps might be and how we can do it using our hearts, and using our hearts to listen and to do together. LaFontaine Baldwin lecture occurred in 2010, and Maulana Hazar Imam left us a few ideas which seem very, very relevant, even 11 years down the line now. He mentioned the challenge of pluralism is as old as human civilization. Responding to pluralism is an exercise in constant readaptation. Identities are not fixed in stone. And then he continues, the challenge of pluralism is never completely met. Pluralism is a process and not a product. It is a mentality, a way of looking at a diverse and changing world. So hopefully we shall increasingly embrace this need to learn from each other, to nurture a predisposition for pluralism, and knowing that it is a lifelong commitment to ourselves and to others to grow together. A knowledge set we're not naturally born with, a process, as Maulana Hazar Imam calls it. So we have a common humanity seed to nurture, and we've beautifully watered it this afternoon. Thank you, President Rahim, Muki Saib Shafiq Rahim, for being with us today, for sharing so much thought and leaving us with so much food for thought and reflection. And thank you to everyone at home for watching and for being with us and for thinking further and building further together.